been in these rooms with 20 and 30 CTOs. And when you ask a room of CTOs at the biggest brands, I'm not going to name names, but at the absolute biggest brands on the market, they all have the same problems. So it doesn't matter how big you are, how little you are. We're all really trying to climb the same ladder here, and we all have the same challenges in doing it.
Welcome to the Enterprise Chief Technology Officer Podcast. My name is Shawn Walchef. I own Cali Barbecue in San Diego. I am not an Enterprise CTO, which is why I, for the first time, have a co-host. His name is Jim Balis. He is a well-respected in the industry. He has done so many incredible things, and I would prefer him to toot his own horn. So, Jim, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. The fact that Kelly Eston, Chief Marketing Officer at Toast, when I reached out to her and said, I need a co-host that knows the technical side of enterprise technology, you're the first name that came up. So, Jim, welcome to the show. Thank you for being a co-host, and we'll let you introduce our esteemed first guest.
Sounds good. Well, it's great to be here, Shawn. It was very nice of Kelly to say those kind words. So Jim Balis, I'm a partner at an investment firm, Capital Spring, accidentally wearing the hat today. It truly was an accident. I had a different hat on that said EBITDA on it. I didn't think that was appropriate for a technology show, so I changed out. Yeah, we invest in lots of different businesses, emerging brands in the restaurant space. We have lots of different great businesses in our portfolio. Hopefully we can get a couple on the show. Everything from franchisors, franchisees, independent concepts. We love the space. I've been in it my whole life. Started as a dishwasher when I was 14, worked my way up, and here I am. And very happy to be joined by Troy. Troy and I have known each other for a number of years here. We've become close friends outside of just the professional relationship. So it's great to see Troy. Always prefer it in person, but a very esteemed colleague here and lots of experience in the space. Troy, it'd be great to get your background, and up through where you are today.
Jim, like you, thank you very much, gentlemen. I started as a busboy at Bennigan's in 1992, and now I'm a CEO of a Japanese restaurant brand. I don't know how this happens. You just put one foot in front of the other and keep saying yes to things, and amazing things come your way. But been in this business 33 years and love every aspect of it. Currently CEO of Hot Palate America, parent company of Pepper Lunch Restaurants. We have 566 restaurants in 17 countries today. We will have 568 by the end of this weekend because we're opening Frisco, Texas, and Dove Valley, Arizona, our second store in Phoenix, Arizona area. So we're excited about that. On a tear of growing this brand, not only in North America, but continuing to grow it globally. Japanese fast casual concept that you can find all over the place. Look up pepperlunchrestaurants.com.
And what's the temperature of the food you serve?
500 degrees. So it's 500 degrees Fahrenheit, 260 to 270 Celsius, if you prefer that measurement, depending on where you are in the world.
So we know that we know that the world doesn't need another podcast, but I think the goal of this show, the reason why I want someone like Jim, someone like Troy, who don't have much time, I think it's so important for our industry to have complex conversations and hopefully simplify them. My job on this show is to ask the stupid questions. So I hope that I do a good job doing that, but to give the context to the show, understanding how does technology work when we're talking about restaurant groups that are running hundreds of locations, if not thousands of locations? How do we simplify those problems? Jim, can you just, for the audience that doesn't know who Jim Balis is, give us an idea of your background of what types of brands you've worked with and how you've helped scale those brands?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long list. So I've been the CEO of, I think, 17 different restaurant companies now over my long career. As you can see from the color of my beard, I've been around the block. And I've worked with a number of independent concepts and grown them from small businesses to big businesses. Most recently, I was a CEO of a business that hopefully will be a podcast year coming up called Sizzling Platter. It's what they call a mumbo, which is a multi-unit, multi-brand concept. They have 8 brands. So when we invested in that business in 2019, I think they had 5 brands and 300 something locations. And we sold it last year in July. And we had close to 900 locations and added 3 new brands. So really grew that business, US, Mexico, so multi-country. We were in something like 20 something states. I forget the total number. And so it was tough doing both jobs. I was the CEO of Sizzling, as well as my partner role at Capital Spring. But so it was nice to sell that and be back to one job here.
It's amazing. Troy, when did you meet Jim? Let's go inside.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, probably 4 or 5 years ago, probably RLC. It's my favorite place to meet high power superstars like Jim. And then, I think we knew of each other and met a few times, and we started actually showing up at the same dinners. Shout out Jeff Alexander. We started hanging out. We made it a point. I will say I made it a point to sit elbow to elbow. Look, my advice to anybody in the industry, I get asked every day, my number one piece of advice is you got to get in the room. Like if the opportunity presents itself, sit next to the guy that you want to know something from, you want to learn from, you want to be most like. And if I end up, 1,000th of what Jim Balis is in this career, I will have done very well. And so along those lines, it's like if you want to learn something, you got to get in the room with those people. And people, why am I on a CTO show? Well, we don't have a CTO at Pepper Lunch. We have quite a few technology people at Pepper Lunch, but I get invited to summits and private corporate get-togethers by companies like DeliverAct, right, or Momo's or other businesses, and I have the privilege of being in the room and being the only CEO many times in a room of CMOs or in a room of CTOs in this case, because if you're not curious and you're not asking questions, you're not willing to ask the dumb questions, you're not willing to put that CEO ego, so to speak, if it exists, on a shelf and put yourself in a position of learning and curiosity, you're not doing the right thing by your business. You owe your business the responsibility of learning and understanding all aspects of your business, because I can't hire a CTO or other technology people or buy technology from the market if I don't understand what the hell's going on. So I think, CEOs have to be engaged and aware. And certainly I don't know every aspect and I don't want to know every aspect, but I do need to know enough to be able to judge the quality of a vendor or the quality of a hire.
At the drive-thru, small changes add up fast. A few cents here and there across thousands of orders, and you're talking real money. Recently, we ran a full-cycle experiment with a national QSR brand using Checkmate digital menu boards, side by side against the baseline. Same stores, same time frame, and in just 30 days, average check size increased by nearly $1. That's about a 6% lift. No extra labor, no slower lines, just digital menu boards surfacing the right add-ons and offers at the right moment. If you want your menu working as hard as your team does, learn more at itsacheckmate.com.
Jim, when you decided to say yes to my crazy request to put a podcast into your very robust, important schedule, what were you hoping to get out of it? I mean, we're trying to connect with not only chief technology officers, but this industry, technology's never moved faster. We're recording this in 2026, and I think all of us collectively on this call can say, in the last 2 years, what we've seen happen is the rate of change is just it's exciting, but it also puts out a little bit of fear in the executives. When I'm talking at trade shows, speaking with Troy, speaking with people like you, there is opportunity, but there's also fear.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of what do we get out of it and what can we give back. I think get out of it is the exposure and the ability to speak to, incredible talent and smart and experienced people like Troy and learn from them. And, some of it's the successes they've had and some of it's the mistakes they've made, right? And getting the benefit of those learnings. And then the ability to give back is, another reason to participate here for those that may be exploring options, or not knowing, what's out there and what technologies work well together and which don't. The ability to give back to those individuals and help educate them, is really appealing to me too.
What do you want to learn about Pepper Lunch and how they evaluate tech stack?
Yeah, what's interesting there is it's a franchisor business, right? So they're navigating franchisees who are sensitive on cost and sensitive on complexity. And so, what may be an ideal tech stack may not have or may not be a good fit for a franchisor business. So understanding, the selection process, how he considered it, with franchisees in mind, both from, four-wall profitability standpoint, return on those technology investments and what, he hopes to get out of that, as well as, how you pick investments that are going to evolve and continue to innovate over time. Those are some of the questions that I'd be curious to get answers to.
Well, Troy, let's do what we love to do most is storytelling. So tell us the story of, I remember interviewing you for the Restaurant Influencers show in Chicago. You had just been named CEO of Hot Palate America for North America. I got to meet the leadership. I got to meet you. They came on the show. You had a packed schedule in Chicago to meet with technology providers to find out what exactly was your plan and what have you learned since that rollout in Chicago?
A lot, a lot. The number one is best laid plans, right? You can do all the homework and all the due diligence and get all the promises and sign all the documents, and the company can be bought. And then you find out later that it was well into the sales process that they kept secretive, and they made a lot of promises they had no intention of keeping, but no names to be named. Look, for me at the time, it was North America first, right? What is the best in class solution? We were starting from zero. So in the US, it was exciting because I could build anything I want from the ground up. And it had really no implications. If it worked and it delivered value to all sides of the equation, I was going to be okay. But I had to consider the international implications, the global infrastructure at our brand as a legacy brand, 30 years old at the time. And it had no leadership in this space, but also it was a master licensing or master franchising business. And so we already have 26 point of sales in the world. Everybody already did. Several countries have their own apps and their own integrations and their own this, that, and the other thing. And so how were we going to pick things that would also have value and applicability outside of North America as we grew, whether that was just the new countries like UK and Europe or Brazil and South America or potentially Mexico in the future. But how could we potentially reverse integrate into the Asia market, which is just vastly different in the technology space? And that was always part of the consideration. It was like, if I'm looking at two things side by side, all things equal, if one of those partners already is in Asia or is willing to build an infrastructure and support system that would allow us to go to Asia, then we would be most interested in that to try to, over time, integrate these things in Asia. Some things are easier than others, right? It's proven that point of sale is the hardest, believe it or not. And some of these standalone products that can integrate to multiple platforms, easily integrate to platforms. 7 Shifts, the team at 7 Shifts took us on and they're in every country with us practically at this point. And we're using them. One thing that's unique for us is we have 130 corporate stores across 3 countries. And so we can use it in our corporate environment first, test it, prove it, build it out, and then show our franchisees the value that any given product, service, or technology provides us. But 7 Shifts, Momo's was already in Asia. We just committed to rolling them out across the entire enterprise by the end of the year. I think they're in 300 of our 566 stores today. So we're going to continue that process, and they're continuing to add value. So some of these things are very easy and standalone. And then the other ones that really require integrations with payment systems, delivery processor systems. So we use DeliverAct, and we expect to use DeliverAct throughout Asia. They're huge in Asia and Europe. So, being able to add that to our tech stack in the US, it's been a very easy integration for us. But, back to the heart or the core of the question is it depends on where you're coming from, where you're starting, and where you're trying to go. You have to have a very clear understanding of where you are, what deficiencies you have, and then what can you add today that will have an impact. And to Jim's point, franchisees are not very forgiving on this SaaS thing, right? And so my promise to our franchisees is I will never mandate or recommend something to you that doesn't have value to your business. Now, may it also have value as a franchisor for data, insights, aggregation of understanding? Sure. But the purpose is not to drive up your cost of SaaS on a monthly basis and benefit me. It has to benefit you as the independent business owner of that multi-unit location business. And the real challenge, though, when you're starting from scratch and you're trying to implement a lot of things at once, adoption, implementation and adoption and optimized usage of anything that and it doesn't have to just be technology. It's anything you put out there. It's tough in the franchise or franchisee business. And so you have to be patient. You have to be forgiving. You have to be willing to continue to have these conversations. And some people are just going to sit back and want to see proof. And so you prove it out. If you have corporate stores, you can prove it out in and prove it out with a core franchisee test environment. Then you'll get more buy-in over time, and you just have to be patient for that.
How many, just curious, like you said, you mentioned Momos. When you look at a platform like that, how many vendors do you typically speak with, and how do you find out? You say, okay, I want somebody to help me with my social media reviews and how we respond to those and just general feedback and third party. And what's the process that you go through to both find those platforms and then, how you go through the vetting process?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'd say, Jim, the top 3 to 5 in the market. Some things you'll look at 6 or 8 of them. Some things you'll look at 2 of them. Generally, good due diligence is, get all of the information from all of them and then start pushing back and getting to dig deeper. Being in the business a long time, you sort of come with some ideas of some of the things you've used before. But I've always taken this approach, even in my consulting practice before Pepper Lunch, is every business deserves to have its own consideration, right? So Apple, round pegs don't fit in every round hole. There's different shapes of round. And so I think it's really important that I start from scratch every time and say, I might have an idea, I might have a relationship, I might have experience, but let me do the right thing by the business by building or getting the services or tools or resources for that business that it needs at the stage it's at today, but also can it grow? Because, I don't want to have 4 point of sales going from 25 to 250 stores. I want to try to pick something that's going to stick with you, right? And so, I'll say it's a collage. If you go to conferences and you do it intentionally, and you have a list of problems you're looking to solve, that's one. I reach out to my peers. I call people like Shawn and Jim Biddix or even other people within these other companies. I make sure that with intentionality, I reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. I'm looking for that. And then, of course, references. I tell, you ask the vendor for references. Believe it or not, references in our business will tell you the truth. I've found anyway. Somebody gave me a reference. I knew the guy. I was like, hey, I didn't know you were using this. I was actually a competitor to Momo's, believe it or not. And he said, hey, yeah, these guys, I don't know if they're not listening or whatever, but we're leaving them in a week. Don't buy. I was like, woo, okay, thank you. That was an expensive savings. But, I think, again, if you're listening to this and you're feeling overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, there's lots of ways to start, but I think it's not any single avenue. You got to go to if you're looking for tech, go to the tech shows, whether it's MERTech, FS Tech, or any of the larger shows like an RLC where a lot of tech vendors will be, and just ask, like, okay, who does this? Because you have a chance to not only ask the vendors themselves and look at their competitors one by one, side by side, we have a chance to ask your peers and ask specialists within our industry, hey, Jim, who's your tech person? Who should I call? I know it's you in your business. You're very plugged into this, but in a lot of places they're not. And so, hey, CEO, COO, who should I talk to? Oh, well, let me introduce you to Mary. Mary's my head of this or head of that. And they can give you a great oversight on what we're using or what we've tried. So I think a lot of word of mouth, a lot of vetting. But look, salespeople are good. They're good at convincing you that everything's great and everybody's going to love it. It's going to save you all this time and all this money. You really have to test that. You really have to pressure that. And I think one of the things that does that is a long phase consideration process, taking your time, learning more and more about not only that vendor or that area of the business, but also more broadly how things are going over time with other folks. And I like to move fast. I like to make decisions and move fast. But when you're talking about your business and your fiduciary responsibility and your franchisees, your responsibility to them, you really owe it to everyone to be really, really thoughtful about the process. I don't think paralysis analysis is necessary. I don't think you need 30 stakeholders, but I've always said this: you have to have everybody that's going to use the damn thing involved in the consideration of the thing from the very beginning. Hey guys, I think we need this. When we think about that, does everybody agree we need this? Oh, okay. And if we do need it, what's important about it? And go through that really stakeholder insights exercise at scale. And if it's going to touch the customers, you better ask customers. If it's going to touch frontline workers in your restaurant, you better ask them for their opinion, and franchisees and so forth up and down the line. But stakeholder buy-in previous to signing that contract and saying, hey, look what I bought you, shiny new object, go play with it. That's just not going to work out.
Yeah, makes sense.
Jim, has there ever been a time in you have seen CEOs needing to understand the technical side and the technology side of business more than today?
I mean, it's huge today for sure. Really, and I can't believe we're X number of minutes in without talking about AI, but especially with AI today, you really need, as a CEO, CEO's responsibility is, to bring strategic vision to the business among other responsibilities, and obviously running the core business and performing well and getting everybody rowing in the same direction. But, a key element of it is that strategic direction. And in order to responsibly understand how to move in the right direction, in today's day and age, you have no choice. I would say 20 years ago, it was a very different story where, people were relying on their CTOs for a lot of the information. But now, it's almost like the CFO, where you're attached at the hip. It's an integral part of the way your brand is going to evolve and compete. And, it's very different than it was many years ago. So it's important for the leadership of the organization, as Troy said, that everybody has buy-in. If you don't have buy-in, then, you're not setting yourself up for success. But it is very important, more today than it ever has been.
There's nothing more frustrating, Shawn, than signing a contract, committing to your units to a vendor that is going to bring value and information and insights and efficiency to your business, and then watch no one want to touch it. Like, no, we don't have time for that. We're not interested. I don't really see the value. Oh my gosh. You did all the work. You learned all the things. You got the passion. This is going to be a game changer. But if you didn't, and look, I made this mistake at Pepper Lunch, right? Because we did have to onboard a lot of things back to back over the last 3 years. So I didn't really have a choice of sort of one thing at a time. And so some things are going to fall by the wayside. Some things are going to be lower priority on different people's list, right? And so you just have to come back to it and work back to it and work within other people's framework of interest, belief, understanding. They don't think it's a problem. And you have to show them that, no, it may not be a problem today, but we want to prevent that from being a problem. Let's really engage with this and shore up our business now before it is a problem. So, yeah, I mean, to Jim's point, though, oh my God, in the last 4 years, the amount of time you spend trying to understand, and like you said, things just move so fast. You're just not going to do everything super well. Pick the 1, 2, max 3 problems that you need to really solve for. They're going to have highest impact on the different stakeholders, different areas of your business, and where those overlap, that's a great benefit. But you really just cannot sort of boil the ocean. You got to pick something and get a win on the board, and then use that as your proof to go to the next thing.
I do think it's just one other point to kind of further what Troy is saying here. I think it's very important that for a lot of the technologies that we're implementing, that you understand that you have to allocate resources to deploy it. It's kind of like if you buy Excel to be a calculator, right? I mean, it does so much more than just addition and subtraction and division, right? And so if you get these technologies that are very robust, I mean, some of the back office systems, Crunch Time, Ultimatrix, and so forth, they do so many things. And you so often see businesses that are using like this much of it, and they're really not benefiting from the real platform. And as those platforms continue to innovate, if you're using a portion of it, you're not taking advantage of the innovation within that platform. So making sure, to Troy's point, that you pick those selectively and just a few. I always say there's a maximum, not just to financial capital and how much money we have, but human capital as well is a very limiting factor here. And, making sure that you allocate the right resources so you can really take advantage of these tech platforms is very important.
Well, let me add this, Shawn. As Jim was talking, I see this a lot, and I want to appeal to the CEOs and CFOs listening to this at any point, and this should be evergreen and last forever, especially in the larger enterprise businesses. I know you have a lot of employees. I know you have a lot of priorities. I know you have a lot of challenges to address, but everybody in a silo in this world, this day and age, you just cannot make these decisions in these silos. Let your experts and your leaders in these departments do their homework, do their job, but the consideration and the stakeholders have got to be across the entire enterprise. And I just can only tell you, when I see these decisions made in silos, you just get friction within the business. You build resentment across leadership. You get less buy-in and usability. Ultimately, the investment has a lower ROI. And I see so many businesses abandon projects or initiatives or technologies because they couldn't get buy-in, which I think is insane. Like, do the work up front, as we're saying here in our last comments, but please, please, please bring everybody to the table and make sure that everybody has got a voice in the process, not just at the C-suite, but definitely in the C-suite too, because you'll see, CTO come up with something they think is going to be really impactful in the business, and the CFO just says, "It ain't in the cards. We didn't plan for that. We aren't on the same page with this." Or the CEO just has no idea how to evaluate it and then sort of freezes. I've seen that at large businesses, 250, 500,000 unit brands. You see some of these problems. I'll tell you, last piece of the story is I've been in these rooms with 20 and 30 CTOs. And when you ask a room of CTOs at the biggest brands, I'm not going to name names, but at the absolute biggest brands on the market, all say the same they all have the same problems. So it doesn't matter how big you are, how little you are. We're all really trying to climb the same ladder here, and we all have the same challenges in doing it. But one of the things I heard really loudly in those rooms over the last couple of years is sort of this this fractured mindset, this silo decision-making environment. And then it just comes down to a yes or no, thumbs up, Caesar type thing at the end somehow. I think that's really doing a disservice to your business.
Well, Troy, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, being our first guest on our Enterprise CTO podcast. If anybody's listening, if you know a brand that you want to hear from the CTO, please email us, podcast@calibbq.media, and we will get them booked on the show. Troy, what's the best place for people to keep up with you and Pepper Lunch Restaurants?
Everybody knows the answer is LinkedIn. Troy Hooper on LinkedIn.
Troy Hooper on LinkedIn. Jim, before I go, I'm going to ask both of you a question, and that is, which AI tool are you using or most excited about today? And this recording is in March of 2026.
About to use an AI tool that will automatically allocate marketing dollars by hour and time of day to maximize return, whether it be Google, social media, CTV, whatever the channel. Allegedly, it identifies it and will automatically allocate dollars to that channel and post accordingly. So we'll see if it works.
Amazing. Troy Hooper.
Let's circle back and get the name of that after Jim's done testing it. That's my favorite thing to do, by the way. Jim will tell you, I text him, hey, what was that thing you mentioned at dinner that night?
Did it work? Did it work? Are you happy about it?
Do you like it? He's like, yeah, I tested 5 of them. Here's the one that I chose. I love it.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing to do to Jim is, hey, what do you – because, I mean, look, at the end of the day, he has this breadth of businesses that get to give a lot of input in test environments. So it's great. It's funny, Shawn, you introduced me to them. I'll say Polona AI. I was just on a CEO call with Nest Group from Informa, and we spent 10 minutes talking about Polona, and I'm not the one that brought them up. Somebody else brought them up, and then I got to reinforce it. Yeah, we're testing Vision AI, a very different version of Vision AI than some of the systems that have been out for a while. We're really trying to connect the entire guest experience in store from the moment they appear at the door to the moment they leave and after their surveys, their reviews, their return visits through this Vision AI, including accuracy and cleanliness, table turnover times, time at kiosk, what they buy, how much they spend, all that good stuff. So we're stitching together a picture of our guest, particularly in store, as we're heavily a in-store dining experience. And so Polona AI right now is a test partner with us. We've been working with them for a few months on both the phone AI, which I know a lot of people have versions of that, but this Vision AI is quite a different type of AI analytics that comes from the camera system. So we're really excited about the early results we're seeing, and again, continuing to test and see how we can push it.
From the founder of that business, I mean, the resume is insane. She was like number what at Google or Facebook?
She literally has been everywhere except for Apple. She was the CTO of Tinder and apparently saved Tinder from crumpling under its old code. I think she's the head of engineering for Facebook.
The best part of her resume is that she led Instagram Reels. So the Instagram experience.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Incredible.
She led the team that rolled out Instagram Reels.
Maria Zhang, you're getting all the love. By the way, what a lovely, just nice human being. You just would never, ever know who you're talking to from a technical standpoint. I told Shawn this after I met her and learned about it and spent some time with her over the last few months. I don't care what she's building. She's building a platform, an engine. She's building a studio, so to speak, that's just going to solve problems. And the fact that she has dedicated herself to the restaurant industry we all should just feel so lucky that whether it's the voice or it's the vision, I think it's 10 products from now is going to be the thing that puts her on the map and transforms the restaurant industry. I don't know what that is, but I want to be one of the first 3 people standing there when she says, hey, guess what I'm working on? So that's the only reason I'm in the room.
For sure. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Troy Hooper, our first CTO, Enterprise CTO podcast. Please reach out to us. Please subscribe. And if you have anyone that we should meet in person at Restaurant Leadership Show, at the National Restaurant Show in Chicago, we will be there. We would love to talk to you. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it.